says more than 1 million fewer customers flew on the airline in the first 2 weeks of March, and the Supreme Court this morning postponing oral arguments in more than a dozen cases. Stocks rebounding after dropping sharply at the open this morning. Trading actually halted for 15 minutes after the S&P dove more than 7% at the open. Major parts of the economy, from the restaurant industry to the airline industry, taking a hard hit as a result of the fast-spreading COVID-19 novel coronavirus. Investopedia's Caleb Silver.
Bank of America getting hit the worst. Apple down more than 12% right before the open. So every stock, every sector getting hammered this morning, and we should expect that to continue throughout the day.
And he says expect a bumpy ride for a while. This is ABC News.
WXTK News is brought to you by Nairobi at Cardi's Furniture and Mattresses. WXTK Local News.
I'm Mike Patrick with this WXTK News update. Governor Baker ordering new restrictions designed to help stop the spread of coronavirus. All restaurants and bars in Massachusetts must end on-premises consumption beginning tomorrow. Baker's also ordered all public schools in the state to close at least through April 6th. He's also banning all gatherings of 25 people or more and never to slow the spread. First two positive cases being reported in Cape Cod. First announced case of added in 16 sandwich. Barnstable Public School says the man himself of the Catholic Barnstable quarantine. Chatham Community Center closes after it was learned the man who first tested positive was in the building February 29th, according to town officials. Cape Cod Healthcare going into a full visitor ban. It applies to Cape Cod and Falmouth hospitals, other affiliated programs, exceptions made for
And now, filling in for Rush Limbaugh, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Stein.
Yes, America's Anchorman is away, and this is Mark Stein. Your foreign virus coursing through the bloodstream of the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. We're here at Ice Station EIB, and I drove over the border earlier this morning, loaded up with premium Canadian 2-ply toilet paper. I'll be selling that off the back of the truck after the show. But don't try anything, because I got me one of these fancy new assault weapons that Joe Biden is all worried about. The AR-14. It's way better than the AR-13, so don't try anything. Yeah, Rush is out for a couple of days. We have your pals and mine, Ben Matthews, Todd Herman coming in later this week, and then Rush will close things out. And Todd Herman, I think this is at his Twitter feed. He posted a lovely thing this morning of a big moose wandering through his backyard, and he said that this is God's way of telling him that the Lord will provide even in desperate times. So Todd, even as we speak, is dressing that moose and settling in for a full bowl of moose stew a little later. Ken and Todd in later in the week, and Rush. It's a busy news week. It is a Monday like no other. infected Americans coming down to Mexico. So do you realize this coronavirus has actually is proving more effective than anything else tried at stopping ISIS, stopping Iran, and stopping illegal immigration from Mexico? That is quite remarkable. I have two things to say before we get 1-800-282-2882. I have two, and you can call me up and talk about any aspect of this fast-moving news cycle, and it's very fast-moving. There were twice the number of cases, in the United States of this thing that there were on Friday, for example. So this thing is moving pretty fast. And by the way, all the number of cases is all rubbish anyway, because of the big failure to get the test kits out. And so now we're being told that, oh, don't worry, the incompetent bureaucracy is on top of these things, and it's going to get the test kits out. This is going to be the last week test kits matter, because none of the test numbers moving forward, which is horrible. And I want to make 2 points about this right at the beginning. One is practical and one is philosophical. If you want to know how to think about this thing, the statistic people talk about all this flattening the curve. You know, the cliches take off faster than the virus and become annoying after just a couple of days. I'm tired of hearing about people flattening their curve. It sounds like but the point is, the one that was saying whether they should the death. Italy yesterday posted the highest number of deaths of any country ever since this thing began in a single day. Up, I think it's 359, something like that. I've been watching this. They They've been in this hideous situation and they can't. So right now, so far, Italy has seen something that is proportionately a death toll equivalent to 3 9/11s, right? 3 9/11s. I don't care what view you take of the politics of it, 3 9/11s is a big pile of corpses. That's the one on the Germany and France are about 8 or 9 days behind Italy. The UK and the US. The Surgeon General said today, if you don't believe me on this, Trump's Surgeon General said we're 2 weeks behind Italy. So is the UK. They're the numbers. That's the practical thing, watching that Italian death number as to whether you can flatten that death curve. The other thing is, the other point I want to make is philosophical about how to think about this thing, and we'll get into that in just a moment. 1-800-282-2882. Mike made it into New York City to operate and twiddle all the knobs that keep this thing on the air. Coming in by a deserted train into a deserted city, and Greg is also there. He is monitoring things from afar. Fast-moving day, a jittery day on the stock markets. We will bring you all the news between now and the time we close things out, and almost immediately after we go off air, I believe the President's Coronavirus Task Force will be holding their latest press conference. 1-800-282-2882, Mark Stein in for Rush.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
When you want to get sleep, there is one thing that matters most, and that's comfort. If you're uncomfortable in bed, getting to sleep, just impossible. But if you want to get the best sleep of your life, you want a brand new set of Boll & Branch sheets. They're the softest, the most comfortable sheets you will ever feel. 97% of customers surveyed say they sleep better on Boll & Branch sheets. Now, they're made of pure white by hundreds of thousands of Americans. You just have to feel them for yourself. They are easily comparable to $1,000 sheets. And now they start at just $160. Plus you get 30 nights to try them. Shipping is always free. Get $50 off your first set at bollandbranch.com, making sure you use the promo code RUSH. Now we spell that B-O-L-L and branch.com. Promo code RUSH. Remember, 30 days. If you don't like them, send them back. Now restrictions may apply. See bollandbranch.com for details.
Will Curry, Chief Strategy Officer at Pure Talk USA, is here to tell us how easy it is to switch to Pure Talk and save up to 50% on your monthly cellular service.
Pure Talk USA believes in being straightforward without any gimmicks. We're a no-contract wireless service with the same great coverage at half the cost of the other carriers. Our CEO and chairman is a U.S. Army veteran with over 30 years of telecom experience.
Tell us more about Pure Talk's plans.
We have plans starting at just $20 a month, including unlimited talk and text. Your plan just depends on how much data you need. We're so confident you're going to love Pure Talk USA, we offer a first month risk-free guarantee.
Well, it feels like it might be a big hassle to change carriers.
Switching is easy. You can even bring your own phone, or you can choose from one of our Apple or Android devices we have in stock. Plus, we offer free 2-day shipping on every order.
Check out PureTalkUSA.com now to save 50% off your first month, or dial pound 250, say the keyword Pure Talk. Dial pound 250 and say Pure Talk. You'll have the option to receive a one-time auto-dial text from Pure Talk USA.
Mark Woods for Ideal Floor and Decor, Cape Cod's only design center on Route 28 in Hyannis. We don't have salespeople, just experienced interior designers, and the service is totally free.
Yeah, one of the best things about the advent of St. Patrick's Day is the fact that spring is just a week away. Hi, this is Glenn Orman at Oliver's and Planks Tavern in Yarmouthport. If you enjoy St. Patrick's Day for the more conventional reasons, like corned beef and cabbage, we've got the menu for you. In addition to corned beef and cabbage of the red variety, we'll be making and serving a traditional Irish lamb stew. Both are served with fresh baked Irish soda bread. We'll also be offering a regular menu, which includes another Irish favorite, our slow roasted lamb shank. Oh, and let's not forget, Easter is just a couple of weeks after St. Patrick's Day. We'll have a nice variety of Easter specials for you, along with our regular menu. We do take reservations for Easter, so give us a call at 508-362-6062. Oliver's and Planks Tavern, open 7 days a week year-round on Route 6A, right on the Yarmouth-Dennistown line. Oliver's and Planks Tavern, serving Cape Codders and visitors since 1983.
The most current and comprehensive, just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour, and always online at 95wxtk.com.
Hey everybody, we are
Lady Annabella.
When we started out in Nashville, we never imagined what we were going to be able to achieve. We got here because we worked together and had each other's backs.
In America, we have the privilege of being a diverse society made up of people from all kinds of backgrounds, and that's a big part of what makes this country such a great place to live.
When we put aside our differences and work together, there is no challenge too great to overcome. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Completely disgusting.
Say it here.
And what's going on in our political and social systems.
News Radio 95, WXTK. News Radio 95, WXTK.
Mark Stein in for Rush on America's #1 radio show. I said I wanted to make a kind of philosophical point before we get deep into individual aspects of what's going on around the world. You hear talk about the politics thing, and yeah, there is politics. There is politics in all this, and we saw it the other day with you know, Nancy Pelosi trying to ram through this zombie apocalypse Planned Parenthood supplemental funding bill that she's all hot for. The politics is what it is, but there's something that at this stage transcends politics, because unless you've got like a super in control political leadership, the politics has to impact the bureaucracy, which as a practical matter means it's like turning round the Titanic after you've hit the iceberg and you're already sinking. It's hard to turn in those conditions. And you can look at the various places this thing has sprung up. You can look at what's happened in China. You say, yeah, well, America's not like China. America's not like Iran. America's not like Italy. America's not like Spain. You know, China doesn't have a First Amendment. Italy doesn't have a Second Amendment. That's all true. That's all true. But all these countries, whether they're totalitarian dictatorships, whether they're socialist basket cases, whether they're theocratic tyrannies, whether they're advanced Western democracies, when something like this happens, they all depend on bureaucracies. And oddly enough, the bureaucratic mentality transcends whatever ideology it's operating in the interests of. That is why if you read Kafka, if you read almost anything by Kafka, if you read The Trial, if you read The Castle, if you read any, that is why Kafka is still read. Not because we're living in the kingdom of Bohemia in 100 years ago, but because, oddly enough, bureaucratic behavior in the kingdom of Bohemia 100 years ago, as distilled by Kafka, is remarkably similar to going to the DMV in the early 21st century in the United States of America. There is something about the bureaucratic mindset that transcends the systems it's supposed to be operating in the interests of. And you see this, the need to self-protect above all else. That's why the FBI, for example, the president tweeted about this over the weekend. The FBI has just announced that it's mysteriously lost all the files on General Flynn. You remember this guy, General Flynn, the guy whose savings were exhausted, life was ruined, family was ruined because he committed the crime of misremembering to the FBI, which is a very Kafkaesque crime, actually. He would have recognized that. And yet mysteriously they announced over the weekend, because a coronavirus, as one of Tony Blair's advisors said on 9/11, is a very good time to get out news we want to bury. So the FBI announced that it's mysteriously lost all its files. No one, and here's the thing, none of those bureaucrats who did, we're expected to believe that, and none of the bureaucrats telling us they've lost General Flynn's files will pay the price for it. Just as all the complete useless tosspots who were around on 9/11 have either retired on government pensions or are still in their jobs today. Nobody was fired for a fiasco. And 9/11 is another useful thing about that. Bureaucrats' systems are always geared up to fight the last war. So on 9/11, when those guys seized the planes, everyone thought it was 1973, and they were demanding some money or some prisoner release and being and going to take the flight to Cuba or to Libya or whatever. Bureaucrats, there's something about the bureaucratic mentality, and that's why an Italian bureaucracy and a Spanish bureaucracy and even an Iranian bureaucracy and US bureaucracy than people like to admit. That's a very important point. And now we saw it with the chaos at O'Hare and Dallas-Fort Worth over the weekends. These are people who are coming in. This was the last chance for Americans to get back from high-risk countries. So let's say you're an elderly granny who's flying in from Europe to get home before all the planes stop. And you've taken care of yourself because of what's been happening in Italy and Switzerland and France and Spain, not to expose yourself. And you're an elderly American granny flying back, and you land at O'Hare, and you're held in a packed corridor for 4 hours because Bozo the bureaucrat who's on the gate can't get up to speed. So no government, I don't care whether it's American or Iranian, has the right to infect its citizens.
WXTK Local News.
I'm Mike Patrick with this WXTK News Update. Governor Baker ordering new restrictions designed to help stop the spread of coronavirus. All restaurants and bars in Massachusetts must end on-premises consumption beginning tomorrow. All public schools in the state ordered to close at least through April 6th. Baker also banning all gatherings of 25 people or more in an effort to slow the spread. Harwich Fire Department issues a statement about a recent social media post talking about a potential case. Fire Department says the post that says a firefighter in the town has been quarantined for COVID-19 is not accurate. Testing indicated the firefighter has the flu and is at home recovering but not under quarantine. Fire Department says there is a strong potential for inaccurate information to be shared in the coming weeks. They're asking people to verify information they receive on COVID-19. Sandwiches Town meeting scheduled for March 23rd moved to April 13th due to coronavirus concerns. Sandwich, the second town to postpone. Tisbury postponed its March 31st meeting on Friday as well. I'm Mike Patrick, News Radio 95 WXTK.
This report is sponsored by ExpressPros.com.
Now, your look at NBC 10 Boston's first forecast for Cape Cod and the islands.
I'm NBC 10 Boston meteorologist Matt Lewis with your first alert forecast on WXTK. Today is chilly. I mean, this is like a winter redux. The sunshine battling with ocean effect clouds drifting in off the water. High temperatures only in the upper 30s with a breeze. It feels a little cooler than that. Overnight tonight, mostly cloudy, lows in the 30s. And Tuesday, sprinkles and light showers. Highs do squeeze near 50. Wednesday should be a good day. Maybe some more showers again by Thursday.
Coming up, a look at Cape Cod traffic on News Radio 95 WXTK.
Losing sleep over a stressful job or a bad boss? It's time to get to know Express Employment Professionals. More than 500,000 people find work with Express each year. Connect on the Express Jobs app or ExpressPros.com.
Hi, I'm Jake Lowry, CEO of Lowry Financial Group and the host of Mass Wealth Radio. Over the past 15 years, I've dedicated my life to researching the best ways for retirees to invest their money so they don't have to worry about market volatility. In 2018, retirees invested more than $218 million in financial tools that offer principal protection with unlimited growth potential. If you'd like to sleep easy at night and not worry about market volatility, then call my office for a no-cost, no-obligation consultation at 855-318-8387. Again, 855-318-8387. Let me help you put your worries aside and assist you in taking control of your financial future. That number again is 855-318-8387. Again, 855-318-8387. Lowry Financial.
And to hear more from Jake Lowry, listen to Mass Wealth Radio every Saturday night at 7 on WXTK. And if the Bruins are on the air, Jake is online. Check out LowryFinancial.com for this week's show and past episodes.
This report is sponsored by Bob Evans Dinner Sides.
Now, Cape Cod traffic on News Radio 95 WXTK.
Seeing a good ride this afternoon. Starting on Route 6 West from Barnstable out to the Sagamore Bridge, you have a 12-minute ride, no delays through there. On Route 25, that is clear sailing through Wareham, and the rest of your ride is still at the speed limit. With the latest look at Cape Cod traffic, I'm Jeannie Grant.
Make mealtime easy and delicious with Bob Evans side dishes like mashed potatoes and mac and cheese. They're made with real milk, butter, cheese, and potatoes and are ready in the microwave in 6 minutes. Try Bob Evans sides from your grocery store. It'll be love at first bite.
News Radio 95 WXTK.
Turn to Mark Stein here on the Rush Limbaugh program.
Hey, great to be with you. We have Ken Matthews, we have Todd Herman, and we have some new guest hosts we're trying out coming in toward the end of the week. What's his name? Rush? It's an unusual name. You sure about that? Yeah, he's going to be coming in later in the week. But by the way, if you do not want to be discombobulated by a sinister foreign guest host, you might like to check out the latest edition of the Limbaugh Letter. This is, I'm looking at the hard copy. You can get it digitally, or you can get it in hard copy, or you can get it in both if you go to rushlimbaugh.com. But if you're a Rush fan, doesn't matter whether you've been listening for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you won't want to miss this, and you'll want to have it in hard copy. I've got it. It's an absolutely beautiful edition with a super stylish photo. I don't know how they managed to get, I don't know whether this was an official government photographer or whatever, but it's Karsh of Ottawa standard, I would say, if you know your black and white photographers, of Rush receiving his Presidential Medal of Freedom. And then inside, there's lots of other photographs, and Rush actually gives his account of that day when he thought he was just going to have a day of tedious and painful and uncomfortable medical tests, and he was sitting around in a t-shirt and shorts, and the president called him and said, you need to rustle up a suit and tie, and we're going to get you to Washington for this. It's a fantastic issue. It's a lovely issue, and you know, it's not like a regular edition of the Limbaugh Letter. It doesn't have the big interview in the middle or anything like that. It really is just a lovely souvenir of what was a remarkable couple of days in Rush's life, and just the picture on the front is worth it. If you don't subscribe to the Limbaugh Letter, it will be the last print publication on the planet. It's well worth getting. It's not a big bulky thing that will clog up your mailbox, but everything in there is premium and worth it, and all you need to do to get it is go to rushlimbaugh.com, click on the Limbaugh Letter button. This is an issue you do not want to miss. I just want to, oh, by the way, I did say we'd entertain, I'd like anyone who wants to talk about the Biden ban to actually explain why it is that it's worth talking before anything. I watched these. First of all, it was really a bizarre look for the Democrats. They choose every time just the party of old white men and you'll all be dead soon. There were the Democrat Party, 2 hours, and it was a bloody long 2 hours. And as I said, this has been a fast-breaking news cycle, and they were asked, the Biden thing, I must actually get you the transcript of that, because I'll gladly read out some portions of where we got the Biden transcript here. This was just an incredible thing. He was just talking about, you know, his plan for the coronavirus thing, and he was saying they kept coming back to what you should be doing, and he was okay for the first couple of minutes, and then he started actually talking more generally, and he goes, what we need to do is we need to be in the Situation Room every day, and we have to bring together everyone in the Situation Room together to address what is really the seriousness of the virus that we're addressing. And once we do that, when I'm president, we will be in touch with all the leading people who are in the Situation Room to come together and talk about the situation. Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President, for laying out all the specifics there. Bernie, meanwhile, he just he tries to fit the news into essentially his stump speech. I always thought he was sort of nimbler than Biden, but he wasn't good last night, you know. His thing is just to take his essentially Cuban worldview and fit whatever's happening into it. it's not a good look for the Democrat Party, and it does remind you. You know, I love this. People say, well, the thing about this coronavirus is that there's no need to panic because it only kills people like over 60, 70. Okay. Have you had a look at the Democrat Party lately? You know, who's that going to take out? If I were Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden began the debate by actually coughing and touching his mouth, which you're not meant to do. And that would clear the Situation Room in nothing flat if he were in there. And then you get Bernie sniffling and insisting he has no symptoms of the virus. You know, Trump took the test. And has come out negative. I'd be interested to see Bernie, to see Biden, see Nancy Pelosi take the test. But you know what they say, all this, they go, it only affects old people. Okay, well, that's been bad news in Iran because they're run by geriatric ayatollahs who are dropping like flies. What do you think it would do to, say, the Senate Justice Committee? Did you take a look at that during the Kavanaugh hearings? Dianne Feinstein, Chuck Grassley, Pat Leahy. What? The average age of the Senate Justice Committee is above the average death rate for the coronavirus. There's going to be a big hole in congressional leadership. If this thing were to take off. Now I just want to finish up a thought I was saying about the bureaucracy, because it's about the bureaucracy. And what's bad, yesterday, for example, yesterday evening, I think there was this kind of 6 p.m. Eastern press conference, and the Homeland Security guy was there, and he was explaining that yes, what happened, because they're all theocratic nutters, who think that Allah wants you licking holy relics that have been licked by 5,000 other people. It wasn't very impressive in Italy because they reacted late and were overwhelmed. And on the evidence, you know, of what happened at O'Hare and Dallas-Fort Worth, as a practical matter, our bureaucrats weren't that impressive either. It's not impressive in Canada. I'm not making a pro-Canadian point here, because the Canadian government is basically lying to its citizens. It says they've instituted special enhanced screening measures at Canadian airports, and everyone is saying, actually, I just landed 2 hours ago and there were no enhanced screening measures. There's a touch-tone screen that says, I acknowledge that I am being asked to self-isolate for the next 14 days. And you click, and you press the acknowledge button. You know, a good way to get the coronavirus is touch-tone screens, by the way. That in itself is very helpful. All bureaucracies, doesn't matter whether they're capitalist bureaucracies, socialist bureaucracies, totalitarian bureaucracies, theocratic bureaucracies. In the end, they're bureaucracies, and it's one great global union. Mark Stein for Rush, more straight ahead.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
I'm Pat Woodard, and this is Stifel Investor Insights with Stifel's Chief Investment Officer, Michael O'Keefe. Michael, COVID-19 means more market volatility. What's the latest?
Pat, stocks fell last week with the S&P 500 down 8.7% and the Dow Jones Industrial Average off 10.2%. And this includes a big positive day on Friday, with the markets up about 9% as the U.S. federal government declared a state of emergency and released about $50 billion in funding. As we watch communities and businesses shut down to help protect people and slow down the outbreak, investors are worried about the economy. Things are really slowing down by design, and markets opened up much lower today. Volatility.
You talked before about the central bank support that we're getting, and it looks like there was significant action over the weekend.
Yes, in a dramatic move of support, the Fed cut its benchmark rate a full 1% after moving up its meeting from this week to this last weekend. They're pulling out all the stops to support the economy and the markets. At Stifel, this Wednesday, I will be joined by our chief economist, Lindsay Piegza, as we hold a special call with clients to discuss COVID-19 and the economic and market environment. To learn more, our listeners can speak with their Stifel financial advisor.
Thanks, Michael. Your path to investment advice starts with your Stifel financial advisor. Find yours at Stifel.com. That's Stifel. Incorporated. Member SIPC and NYSE.
Hi, I'm Kyle Cox, owner of Blindster.com. That's BlindsTER.com. Can you read a tape measure and turn a screwdriver? If so, you can enjoy our custom blinds, shades, and shutters and save money by doing it yourself. I'm so confident you can install our blinds. If for any reason your blinds don't fit, even if it was your mistake, we'll remake the blinds in the size you need free of charge. You only pay shipping. And for Rush listeners, use the code RUSH and save up to 50%.
Opinion. That's why I urge you to listen to our Death Perception podcast. You will learn all about the myths and mysteries of the funeral business. Simply go to our website, CasperFuneralServices.com, and click on the link to our Death Perception podcast with Joe Casper. When funeral directors purchase items for their business, they shop around. They get second and third opinions. They look for the best price and best service. I certainly do that. Do you do that as well? Why would you as an individual making funeral arrangements do differently? Always put the best wishes of your loved one first. Choose wisely. Call Casper Funeral Services at 800-314-1890. I'm Joe Casper.
We're more than talk. Can I get more? You can message, tweet, and tag us too. News Radio 95 WXTK.
And now, filling in for Rush Limbaugh, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Stein.
Yes, America's Anchorman is away, and this is your undocumented Anchorman. Thrilled and honored to be here, as always. I usually say around this point in the show that if you're fleeing the country, do stop by and say hello, because we got a big sign on the border saying, on the highway saying last Rush guest host before the border. But there isn't really any point in fleeing the country anymore, because Canada, the interesting thing about this is the one great clarifying moment. The thing that Donald Trump did early on was stopping incoming flights from China at a time when it made a difference. One of the interesting things, he's banned, tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day, the 17th, and it's going to be a super quiet St. Patrick's Day. All the Irish bars in Boston and everywhere, and New York, all going to be closed, and no one's going to be, if you're Irish, come into the parlour. If you're Irish, this is your last chance to come into the parlour, because at midnight tonight, from midnight tonight, Irish, English, Scottish, Welsh, the last 4 exemptions from Trump's Euro ban on entering the United States, that the Britannic loophole will be closed, and those 4 groups of Anglo-Celts will no longer be permitted to enter the country from midnight tonight. So if you're Irish and you want to come into the American parlour, you're in the last 11 hours of being able to do so, and then you're in the same category as all the Italians, Germans, Austrians, Swedes, and those other Euro bums. You can't get in either. The one great thing he did was right at the beginning, when no one was really paying attention to all this thing, was to ban flights from China. The Canadians, if you're, as I said, if you're thinking of fleeing the country to Canada because they be doing things so much better, first of all, Canada has a joke government. It's got a joke government that lies. Bill Blair, who's Trudeau's put in charge of this thing, he's the guy who was the police chief in Toronto. Awful, ghastly, horrible, anti-free speech, anti-liberty police chief. He should be running some Latin American basket case, cruising around in reflector shades, because he'd make a good strutting Latin American caudillo. And he's been saying, oh, there's all these extra screening things. No, you're invited to touch a screen saying that you acknowledge you've been invited to self-quarantine. And in touching that screen, you're increasing your risk of getting the virus and your need to self-quarantine. 4 flights, all flights from China are still landing at Vancouver, where they have, I think, how many, is it 4 or is it 8 flights a day? They got a lot of flights a day coming from China to Vancouver, because it's Hongkouver, as they call it out there. All those flights are still coming in. All those flights are still coming into Toronto, to Montreal, and they all do the same. The same. They're all going on as if nothing has happened. And this is a guy, Justin Trudeau. His wife's got it. His wife's got the coronavirus, just like the Spanish Prime Minister's wife has got the coronavirus. It's a mysterious thing. When you look at actually the numbers worldwide, it appears to affect men more than women. And yet, oddly, when it comes to prime ministerial couples, it seems strangely to affect the women and not the men. So officially, we have all these prime ministerial consorts like Mrs. Trudeau who've come down with the coronavirus, but none of the prime ministers themselves appear to. That's interesting too. Again, it's a bureaucratic thing. Your governments are lying to you, right? And that's not unusual. Doesn't matter whether it's China or Canada. There's a lot of that about. But the point here is, Trump took action January. It's still possible to fly for Chinese people to fly into Vancouver and just simply drive south of the border. And all these things, it gets to you get into weakest link territory with this stuff. Now, as I said, I'm not so interested in the politics of this, because the politics is whatever it is. So, you know, we now know that it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's the zombie apocalypse or 9/11. But that Nancy Pelosi's priority is to increase abortion funding. Actually, that's one of the things that may come out of this, is that there will be a little baby boom blip in 9 months' time from all this quarantining, because there isn't anything to do if you can't leave the house. I was tweeted by R.J. Romano. Says, what about the Illinois governor ordering restaurants and bars closed for 2 weeks? You know, as I said, that's why I pay attention to the Italian situation. In Italy and Spain, and increasingly in France too, everything except grocery shops and pharmacies are closed. And nothing's open. Nothing's open. They experimented for a few days with keeping the bars and cafes. In Italy, they experimented with keeping the bars and cafes open till 6 p.m. And requiring people to stand a meter apart from each other in the bars and cafes, which is free fit and change. And they had that actually in New York last night, where they had 50% occupancy rules. And the fire department was sent to inspect bars and restaurants to ensure that they were only at 50% occupancy. Can you think of a bigger waste of emergency services time than going to Bud's Bar and Grill and checking that only 50% occupancy is taking place? Well, he abandoned that 24 hours later and said that they'd all be closing. R.J. Romano says, what do those unemployed workers do? Turn to the streets. And you're right. You're absolutely right. It's an economic tragedy. It's an economic tragedy. But we're now in the stage where, for example, China announced today that there's been a 13%, its manufacturing has dropped 13%. And yes, China lies, so that figure might be an underestimate or whatever. But it means that as everything in every American's house comes from China, just turn up everything, just go into your kitchen now and look at the bottom of every cup. Everything in every American's house comes from China, because that's the model that the bipartisan half-wits who've been running this country for 30 years decided to enable. Nothing, Americans do, 40% of Americans now do service jobs. Well, there's no service jobs now because everything you can do has been shut down. So there's no restaurants, there's no bars, there's no Disney World, there's no Broadway, there's no baseball, there's no NHL. So all the front of house staff at Hamilton on Broadway, at the Richard Rodgers Theatre, they're all off. All the front of house staff at your hockey and basketball stadiums, they're off. Because that's what we do now. Because the people who do those services